We must stop the glorification of violence in our society. This includes the gruesome and grisly video games that are now commonplace. It is too easy today for troubled youth to surround themselves with a culture that celebrates violence.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Hello YouTube and welcome back. This is Nico and you're watching Dare to Game. Today we'll be talking about some gaming related news, as you may have been able to tell from the title and the thumbnail. So our topic today is the scapegoating and fear-mongering that has recently been floated by US politicians once again, that video games cause violence, and they are the reason so many people are dying. Now I know what you're thinking, but no, we didn't time travel back to the 90s, it's just boomers at it again attacking things that they do not know anything about, and as usual, without any scientific evidence to back up their claims. So let's dive on in. So for starters, I would like to clarify one thing, and that thing is that there is nothing that causes violence. Violent actions are the result of conscious thought and a decision to harm others. There may be factors like mental health that make it more likely, and there may be reasons for doing so. But there is nothing that is going to force you or I to harm another person. That is, always has been, and always will be a choice that people make freely. I say all of this because I'm sick of people saying things like, "I'm sorry that happened," or "It's tragic what happened." It didn't just happen. Someone, usually one sick individual, did that thing. And it is no one or nothing's fault but that one person. Stop trying to blame the actions of individuals on other people or inanimate objects. Now that I have that little bit of personal raving out of the way, I would like to frame our situation a bit. So as you probably know, this discussion has once again been started due to two recent shootings in the United States. One in El Paso, Texas, and the other in Dayton, Ohio. Two tragic events that claimed the lives of 25 people. And as usual, the politicians that we here in the United States have elected both got onto the party horses and kicked the fear-mongering train into full gear, with the left predictably weaponizing the tragedy as an attempt to push legislation to disarm US citizens, and the right going on a moral crusade against the evil video games that cause all of today's problems. I won't be spending any time today discussing the gun control topic, as I feel that it has been handled enough, and also because this is a gaming channel, not a political channel. So the only reason I'm touching the subject at all is because that part of it is centered around gaming, an activity that many of us enjoy greatly, and also one that has time and time again been proven to have no link with increased violent behavior. So let's quick touch on some numbers to add a little bit of perspective. More than 165 million Americans play video games daily. It has for many people replaced television as a main source of entertainment. And that is a small chunk compared to the 4.3 billion people globally who play at least 10 hours of video games a week. Now that's an awful lot of people. So one should logically be able to immediately draw from that and wonder why, if violent video games like Doom or Call of Duty do cause violent or deadly outbursts from people, then why isn't the whole world constantly erupting in murderous chaos? Well, simply put, because there is no link between playing violent video games and real-life acts of violence. As Benjamin Burrows, a professor at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, said, there are no longitudinal studies that show a link between violence and video games. Certainly, there is no linkage to gun violence. Plenty of gamers get upset when they lose or feel the game was cheating, but it doesn't lead to violent outbursts, he said. And this is just an echo of every single scientific study done on the subject for the last 30 years. In fact, the book, Moral Combat: Why the War on Violent Video Games is Wrong, explains the whole situation very well, and shows that most research shows that the link might point in the other direction. Patrick Markey, a psychology professor at Villanova University who focuses on video games, found in his research that men who commit severe acts of violence actually play violent video games less than the average male. About 20% were interested in violent video games, compared with 70% of the general population. Like I said, the aforementioned book goes into great detail on the topic, and I do recommend reading it. Another study by Markey and his colleagues showed that on a national level, violent crimes actually dip whenever a new violent movie or video game is released. They theorized that this was because these forms of entertainment offer a release, or outlet for people who otherwise may commit crime. The basic premise here is that although some studies have shown that after playing violent games such as first-person competitive shooters, the player may be a little bit excitable or even jerky, but it in no way changes who they are or makes them any more likely to engage in violent behavior. They compared it to people who go to see a sad movie. They may cry afterwards and feel sadness, but that does not make them clinically depressed. There have been so many studies on this topic that it's too numerous to list them all, but for the sake of a heavy-handed defense, I will cite just one more. The University of New York conducted a series of experiments with over 3,000 participants to see if video games do actually prime players for committing violent acts in real life. Basically, the idea here was to see if there is any weight to the theory that watching or committing violent acts in a digital world both A, desensitizes the player or viewer to the violence they have seen or done, and B, makes them more likely to commit those acts in real life. However, the results were as they always are. Video games, despite their interactive nature, showed a larger reality disconnect with consumers than live-action movies. This means that while, yes, desensitization does occur with violent video games, it also occurs with people who view action movies, or crime thrillers, or horror movies. However, the results showed that people who regularly consume violent media in the form of live-action movies that depict violence show higher signs of desensitization than those who regularly consume violent video games as a media medium. I can quick simplify that a bit to help those of you who may not have understood what I just said. People who play violent video games regularly are less desensitized to violence than people who watch movies where violent actions are taken against other humans. For example, the Terminator, James Bond, the Bourne movies, 300, etc. And that's nothing compared to the people who regularly consume violent slasher or horror movies, like Saw or Friday the 13th. For clarity's sake, this doesn't mean that these people are more likely to commit violent acts in real life, merely that they will not likely find it very shocking or disturbing. On the other side of this same study, we see the priming effect being measured, which, as I stated earlier, is the argument that people who watch or commit violent acts in virtual media, such as TV, movies, or video games, are more likely than others to commit violent acts against other humans in real life. This one, predictably, showed no correlation, despite an extremely wide testing pool of participants, with varied levels of gamers from those who play an hour or less a day to those who regularly play 6 to 8 hours a day of what would be considered violent video games. There was no recordable increase in violent acts or behavior in real life, and the same truth held true for those who regularly consume violent media in the form of TV shows and movies. The reason for this is that there is a cognitive disconnect between reality and media for these people. They understand that what they are doing or seeing is fake. They do not blur the lines of reality for mentally sound human beings, despite the type or frequency of media consumption. Like thousands of studies conducted before it, the study has once again shown that these claims are erroneous, and gaming is in no way affecting the rate at which violent acts are committed. However, in my research for this topic, I did find one group of people that do tend to show higher rates of violent acts, thoughts, and crimes in real life. Before I tell you who I'm talking about, I will give you a few hints, and I would love to see your guesses at who it could be down in the comments section. And remember, we are talking about a form of media consumption that leads to these behaviors. So please, no racist comments, that's not what this is about. So, hint number 1. They lead the developed world in participants of violent riots and looting. Hint number 2. They often actively wish harm on people in real life and celebrate when said people are injured, even fatally. Hint number 3. They lead the entertainment industry in sending death threats. And finally, hint number 4. This group of people is disproportionately more likely to engage in acts of violence towards people in real life. Have you guessed it yet? Well, it's sports fans. Now don't get me wrong, I am a sports fan, and I know many people that are and are not violent, or at least not very violent, towards others in real life. However, multiple studies have shown that there is a correlation between people who commit violent acts and those who regularly and avidly watch sports, especially 3 sports in particular: American football, hockey, and the number 1, soccer. There have been hundreds of riots by fans of sports such as the 3 I have mentioned, and also for baseball, boxing, NASCAR, and basketball within the last 30 years. And these have all been directly linked to the media that these people are consuming. These are people who are angry about something not going their way in a sport that they care greatly about, then going out and beating the crap out of people, or destroying public and private property. To make things simple, I will just talk about the top 10 sports riots of the last 30 years, so we don't get too confused by the massive numbers. So in the top 10 sports riots of the last 30 years, nearly 1,300 people were injured, ranging from minor cuts and bruises to broken bones, fractured skulls, and partial or full paralysis. 95 people were killed. Over 8,000 arrests for violent crimes were made, and over $30 million of damage to private and public property was done. And unlike the events that people have tried to link to video games, these were all committed by sports fans reacting to that form of media. I will link a list of these riots in the description with my other sources if you want to read a little bit about them. It's interesting stuff. Despite a surprisingly small amount of data on the subject of whether or not watching sports causes violence, or violent thoughts or actions, probably because the right people with the most money don't want it being researched, I have a working theory for why this trend is the way it is. Unlike video games, or even movies, where there is a disconnect of reality, where the viewer or player knows that the people they are watching or controlling are not real, the situation they are in is not real, and there is no way that anyone is actually dying or getting hurt. Real-life sports fans are viewing their favorite form of entertainment in real life. The sports that they watch are really happening in real life, with real people, who really do get hurt, and sometimes die. And as sports fans, we cheer for this. We get so tangled up in our team that the people they play become more than just a rival. They become the enemy. So when the other team's quarterback hyperextends his knee, we cheer, because it makes it that much more likely that our team will win. But that is a real person that people are excited to see injured. So is it really that surprising that if one form of media was actually going to be linked to violent actions in real life, that it would be the one where we watch and cheer for violent actions to be committed in real life? So to summarize, or give you a TLDR, there is no correlation between playing violent video games and committing violent actions in real life. Countless scientific and psychological studies have been conducted on this topic, with none showing a negative effect on the player, and many actually showing positive effects, such as improved reaction time, critical thinking skills, hand-eye coordination, creative problem-solving skills, and offering a healthy outlet for the stressful lives that most of us live every day. These boomers have no idea what they're talking about, and they have once again proven themselves ignorant to everyone who has listened. Well, that does it for this video. I'm just about done ranting about, political garbage in the gaming world. I feel like most of us already knew this stuff, but I figured I'd lay it all out in one video for those of you who may have been on the fence. This isn't my normal form of media here on the channel. It's more gaming related normally. But, sometimes I feel like you just gotta get into it. But anyway, that's all for today. We'll see you next time. Congratulations on making it to the end of the video. If you did, I can assume you liked the content, and hopefully you'll subscribe and turn on the notification bell. If you haven't already, check out these links I have on the screen to see me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. If you like my content and would like to support what I do here, there's a link to my Patreon account in the description, and a donation would be much appreciated. In any case, thanks for watching and have a nice day.